Rex's howl tore through the solemn silence of the funeral. It was a raw, primal sound of desperation. His paws were a bloody mess, tearing at the solid oak of the casket, leaving crimson stains on the pristine American flag. Only then did the other details register: the unseasonable, biting chill that swept through Pine Grove Cemetery, the black suits and dresses of the mourners, the pale October sunlight. The air was crisp with the scent of decaying leaves. The sacred silence was broken. The German shepherd's cry was a piercing, raw scream of desperation that cut through the ceremony, causing heads to turn and hearts to skip a beat. Officer Alex Carter's funeral, with its perfectly folded flag and rows of polished police badges, was a picture of dignified tragedy. But Rex, Alex's loyal K-9 partner, was tearing that picture apart. He ignored the hands trying to pull him back, his powerful body straining against the leash held by a young, distressed officer. With each frantic scratch, fresh blood bloomed on the flag. The sight was horrifying, a brutal, visceral counterpoint to the sterile order of the military-style service. For God's sake, get control of that animal. Chief Harris's voice was a low, strained command, his face a mask of anguish beneath his formal hat. He had signed the order for the raid that had killed Alex, and the weight of it pressed down on him now. Two officers tried to haul Rex away, but the dog planted his feet, muscles quivering with a strength that seemed supernatural. His amber eyes, fixed on the casket, blazed with an intelligence that was almost human in its intensity. Lisa Carter's breath caught in her throat. Her hand flew to her pregnant belly, her eyes locked on the dog tearing at her husband's coffin. The baby would never know its father. The thought was a physical pain, a cold stone in her chest. But as she watched Rex, a different instinct, honed from her years as an emergency room nurse, began to surface. This wasn't the behavior of a grieving animal. This was the focused, determined action of a creature trying to communicate something urgent. Grief was passive. This was a mission. "Let him be," she whispered, her voice cracking. Then, louder, it carried across the hushed crowd. "Let him say goodbye." But even as she said the words, she knew they were wrong. Rex wasn't saying goodbye. His whimpers had shifted into a pattern, a series of sharp, distressed yelps followed by low, drawn-out moans. He was circling the casket in a precise, counterclockwise path, his bloodied paws leaving a macabre trail on the manicured grass. It was the pattern that caught Walter's attention. Walter Brennan, a Vietnam veteran whose face was a roadmap of past wars, had served with tracker dogs in the jungles of '68. He pushed his way through the line of officers, his old bones protesting. The sound Rex was making, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, sent a jolt of icy recognition down his spine. He'd heard that rhythm before, not from a dog, but from a soldier tapping out a distress code in a dark tunnel. "Wait." Walter's voice was rough, but it commanded silence. "Everyone just wait." He turned to Chief Harris, his eyes grave. "I've seen this. In Nam, a dog named Duke did this exact thing. We were about to bury a man in a collapsed bunker. The dog knew. He knew the man was still breathing in there." Chief Harris's jaw tightened. "Walter, the blast. Alex's injuries. We identified him. The family shouldn't have to see that." He glanced at Lisa, his expression pained. But Lisa was already stepping forward, a new, fierce resolve hardening her features. The grieving widow was gone, replaced by the capable nurse who had faced death in a dozen different forms. "I'm a nurse, Chief. I've seen what bullets and bombs can do. And right now, I'm telling you that my husband's dog is telling us something is wrong." She pointed at Rex, who had now stopped circling and sat rigidly at the head of the casket, placing one bleeding paw directly on the stars of the flag. "He's not mourning. He's alerting." The crowd stirred, a wave of uneasy murmurs passing through it. Fellow officers exchanged uncertain glances. The funeral director, a man named Mr. Sterling, who had overseen 1,000 burials, shook his head slightly, his expression one of professional disapproval. "This is highly irregular," he murmured. "The state of the body, it's not for viewing." It was then that Rex did something that sealed the decision. He lay down directly in front of the casket, not in a posture of rest, but in the exact guard and hold position he'd been trained to take when protecting crucial evidence or a vulnerable person. His head was up, his ears flat against his skull, his entire body vibrating with tension. He was standing guard. He was protecting Alex. A profound silence fell over the cemetery. The wind seemed to still. All eyes were on Chief Harris. The weight of the moment, the dog's undeniable conviction, the raw hope in Lisa's eyes, it all crashed down on him. He took a deep breath, the sound loud in the quiet. "Open it," Chief Harris commanded, his voice low but clear. "Open the casket. If Rex is wrong, the blame falls entirely on me. But if he's right, God help us if he's right." The cemetery workers, their faces pale, moved forward with hesitant steps. They carefully, reverently, folded the stained flag. The metallic click of the latches being released was as sharp and final as a gunshot. As the lid began to rise, a collective gasp swept through the crowd. Rex rose to his feet, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His job wasn't over. It had only just begun. But as the latches clicked open, one terrifying thought remained. If Alex wasn't in the casket, where was he? The polished wood and stifling silence of the cemetery vanished, replaced by the echoing concrete and frantic barking of the K-9 training facility in Riverside. 3 years earlier, the air wasn't filled with grief, but with the scent of disinfectant, dog food, and anxious energy.
At Bonds Unspoken, we believe every story between a human and their animal companion deserves to be heard. If you agree, please like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can join us every time another Bond speaks louder than words.
Officer Alex Carter, his uniform still crisp, stood beside Sergeant Maria Miller, a tough-as-nails trainer with eyes that had seen everything. "I'm warning you, Carter, this one's a hard case," Miller said, her voice cutting through the din as they walked down a corridor lined with kennels. Every chain-link enclosure held a barking, leaping shepherd or Malinois, except one. At the very end, a kennel sat in ominous silence. "That's Rex. Lost his handler, Officer Ben Davis, 6 months ago. Good man. Ambushed during a warrant service. Davis didn't make it." Alex peered into the quiet kennel. A magnificent German shepherd lay in the far corner, his back to the world. His black and tan coat, which should have gleamed, looked dull and patchy. The dog lay motionless, his back to the world, a full food bowl untouched and crusted dry beside him. He didn't lift his head or twitch an ear at their approach. "His full name is Rexford von Hausen," Miller continued. "Imported bloodlines. Top of his class. Was." She sighed. "He's shut down completely. We've tried 4 handlers. He won't eat, won't work, won't even look at anyone. The department is a week from retiring him." Alex studied the dog, and a familiar ache bloomed in his own chest. He'd seen that hollow look before in the mirror after his first partner was killed in a car chase 5 years prior. The memory was a ghost that never fully left him. "Miller, this dog isn't broken. He's waiting for a purpose. Give me a month to show you," Alex said, his voice firm. Sergeant Miller raised a skeptical eyebrow. The others gave up after 1, said he was broken beyond repair. "Then they didn't need him enough," Alex replied, his gaze never leaving Rex. "Sometimes the strongest bonds are forged between broken pieces. My grandfather used to say that about his ranch dogs. I think it applies here." The first week was a lesson in profound frustration. Alex arrived every morning before dawn. He'd sit on the cold concrete outside Rex's kennel, his back against the chain link, and read the newspaper aloud. "Rockies blew another save in the 9th, he'd say conversationally, as if talking to an old friend. "Figure you should know what's happening in your new city." He made no sudden moves, gave no commands, and never tried to force contact. He was a patient, steady presence, a human rock in the turbulent sea of grief. He'd leave his worn workout shirt in the kennel each night, a simple offering of his scent, retrieving it the damp and ignored the next morning. On the 8th day, a tiny crack appeared in the wall. Alex was mid-sentence about a city council debate when he heard a soft shuffling behind him. He didn't turn, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Rex had moved. The dog was now sitting just a few feet from the gate, his head tilted, listening. It was the first voluntary movement Alex had seen him make. A small but significant victory. Was the dog starting to trust him, or was he just curious about the constant, one-sided chatter? The real turning point came during week 3. An emergency call crackled over the station radio. A 5-year-old boy, Liam, had vanished from a park near the sprawling Redwood Forest Preserve. He'd been missing for 4 hours, and the temperature was plummeting. Search teams were mobilizing. As Alex rushed to gear up, a sound from Rex's kennel made him freeze. It was a low, urgent whine. He turned to see Rex standing at the gate, his ears pricked forward, his entire body taut with focus. The dullness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a sharp, blazing intensity. "You want to work?" Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. For the first time in 6 months, Rex's tail moved. It wasn't a full wag, but a definite, purposeful twitch. Sergeant Miller was immediately skeptical. "Carter, he hasn't trained in half a year. His conditioning is shot. He could be unreliable in the field." "He's ready," Alex said with a conviction he didn't entirely feel. "I know it. Aren't you, boy?" They loaded into the K9 unit, Alex giving Liam's favorite blanket to Rex. The moment the dog caught the scent, a transformation occurred. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The lethargy burned away, replaced by pure, disciplined drive. His body became a single, focused instrument, his nose working the air, then the ground. The search area was vast and rugged. Other dogs had already swept the main trails. But Rex worked with a methodical, relentless precision, pulling Alex off the path and into a thicket of dense undergrowth near a creek bed. He moved with an urgency that spoke of a deep, ingrained purpose returning. What did he know that the other searchers had missed? After nearly an hour of pushing through thorny bushes, Rex's pace quickened. He led Alex to a steep, muddy embankment leading down to the creek. There, partially hidden by a fallen log, was a small, dark opening to a drainage culvert. Rex stopped, let out a single sharp bark, and looked back at Alex, his body rigid in a perfect, alert stance. Trusting the dog completely, Alex called out, "Liam, can you hear me?" A faint, terrified whimper echoed from the darkness within the pipe. Alex radioed for backup and, with a flashlight, crawled inside. He found the little boy, shivering and scared, his clothes soaked, but alive. He'd chased a frog and gotten stuck. As paramedics wrapped Liam in a thermal blanket, his mother, Mrs. Gable, wept with relief, her sobs of gratitude echoing through the trees. That night, back at the facility, Alex sat in his usual spot. The silence felt different now. "You did good work today, Rex," he said simply. "You saved that boy. You found him when no one else could." There was a slow, hesitant movement from inside the kennel. Rex approached the gate. He paused, then cautiously pushed his nose through the chain link. Alex held his breath, slowly extending his hand. Rex sniffed his fingers, then nudged his broad head against Alex's palm. The contact was electric. Alex gently scratched behind one ear, and Rex's eyes fluttered closed, a deep, shuddering sigh escaping him as he leaned into the touch. "I know you miss him," Alex whispered, his own throat tight. "I know that pain. It doesn't go away. But we've got important work to do, you and me. What do you say?" In answer, Rex's tail thumped softly against the kennel floor. It was a real, genuine wag. It was the beginning of everything. But the trust they built that day would be tested in a way neither could imagine, starting with a single, misidentified body. Back in the chilling present, the air in Pine Grove Cemetery was no longer still. It was charged with a terrifying electric tension. Every eye was locked on the slowly rising lid of the casket. The polished oak reflected the pale, clouded sky and the faint, sweet smell of formalin mixed with the damp earth, creating a nauseating perfume of death. Lisa Carter's heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, each beat screaming a single silent question. What would they find? The lid lifted inch by agonizing inch, revealing the dark blue fabric of a dress uniform within. The body lay in serene, formal repose, hands folded neatly over the chest, a row of service medals gleaming dully. Standard procedure for an officer killed in the line of duty, especially with severe trauma, was to cover the face with a ceremonial cloth. That white silk square was now the focal point of every person's dread and hope. But even before the cloth was touched, Lisa's trained eyes saw it. The shoulders of the uniform seemed too narrow. The hands resting on the chest were too slender. A cold certainty, entirely separate from hope, began to crystallize in her gut. That's not his build," she whispered, her voice trembling. Walter, standing beside her, gave a grim, almost imperceptible nod. He saw it too. Chief Harris, his face a mask of strained authority, gave a curt nod to the funeral director. Mr. Sterling, his hands shaking visibly now, reached into the casket. His fingers, usually so steady and reverent, fumbled for a moment with the edge of the silk. The fabric seemed to resist, as if holding onto a terrible secret. With a final, gentle lift, he drew it back. A collective, sharp gasp ripped through the crowd, followed by a wave of confused murmurs. The face that lay revealed was not Alex Carter's. It was a younger man with a slighter build, a distinct small scar carving a pale line through his stubble on his chin. He was peaceful in death, but he was a stranger to most of the mourners. A sob of relief escaped Lisa's lips, immediately choked by a fresh wave of dread. "That's not my husband." The scene erupted into chaos. Officers looked at each other in stunned disbelief. Who was in the casket? And if this wasn't Alex, where was he? The answer came in a piercing scream from the edge of the crowd. David. Oh my God, David. Maria Torres, the widow of Officer David Torres, who had been attending a smaller, private service for her husband 50 yards away, came running, her black veil flying behind her. She pushed through the ring of officers, her eyes wide with terrified confusion. What's happening? Why is David? Her question died in her throat as she saw the open casket, saw her husband's face where Alex Carter's should have been. Her legs buckled, and 2 officers caught her as a wail of fresh, brutal grief tore from her lungs. In the midst of the bedlam, Rex finally relaxed his rigid posture. His tail gave a single decisive wag, not of joy, but of grim satisfaction. He had done his job. He had alerted them to the error. Now he sat back on his haunches, his bloodied paws leaving dark stains on the grass, and looked expectantly at the humans around him. His expression was clear. I told you. Now, what are you going to do about it? Chief Harris was already a whirlwind of action, his radio pressed to his mouth. This is Harris to all units. I need immediate confirmation on all officer fatalities from the warehouse shooting. I repeat, verify every single body. Check them now. His face was ashen beneath the brim of his hat. The monumental failure of protocol was a lead weight in his stomach. He turned to his detective. And get me Riverside General on the line. Now. Lisa's nursing instincts surged to the forefront, a lifeboat in the storm of her emotions. The warehouse victims, she said, forcing her voice into a steady, clinical tone. 3 officers were shot. 2 were pronounced dead at the scene. 1 died in transit. The horrific puzzle pieces were clicking together with dreadful clarity. If David is here, then the officer who died in transit. Detective Isabella Reyes, Alex's former partner, finished the terrible thought. Then Alex might be the one in transit. And if he was misidentified there, she didn't need to finish. Detective Reyes didn't wait for orders. She sprinted for her car, keys in hand. The funeral was over. The hunt was on. Reyes, wait. Chief Harris called out, but the dam had broken. The structured solemnity of the funeral shattered into frantic, purposeful chaos. Officers scattered to their vehicles, radios blaring with confused transmissions. Family members wept and shouted, clinging to each other. The media, who had been held at a respectful distance, now surged against the police line, cameras zooming in on the surreal scene. Walter Brennan, the veteran, knelt beside Rex, his movements calm and deliberate amidst the storm. He produced a clean handkerchief from his pocket and began applying firm pressure to the dog's shredded paws. "These need proper tending, son," he said to Rex, his voice a low, reassuring rumble. "But I've got a feeling you're not done working today." Rex licked the old man's hand once, a gesture of thanks, but his eyes were already scanning the crowd, looking for the next threat, the next clue. Lisa's phone vibrated in her hand, the screen lighting up with the name Riverside General. She fumbled to answer it, her fingers numb with adrenaline. "This is Lisa Carter," she said, her voice tight. The voice on the other end was professionally calm, but laced with confusion. "Mrs. Carter, this is Dr. Eris Thorne. We've just received a very unusual call from your police department. We need you to come to the hospital immediately. There's a situation regarding patient identification." "Is my husband alive?" The words burst from her, raw and desperate, bleeding a hope she was almost afraid to feel. There was a pause, a silence that felt like an eternity. "We have a patient in the ICU," Dr. Thorne said carefully. "A John Doe brought in from the warehouse incident. Severe facial trauma made visual ID impossible. And in the chaos of that night..." Another pause, heavier this time. "Ma'am, we need a family member to confirm his identity. Can you come now?" "We're on our way," Lisa said, already moving, grabbing her daughter Chloe's hand. Rex limped to her side, ignoring his own pain, a solid, reassuring presence. The mission had simply changed location. The grave had offered a terrible clue, but the real answers lay at the hospital. And Rex would be there every step of the way, because the job was far from over. What would they find when they reached the ICU? The next chapter of the nightmare was about to begin. The solemn procession of mourners transformed into a chaotic motorcade of desperation. Sirens wailed, carving a path of urgency through the quiet suburban streets. Inside the lead police SUV, the atmosphere was thick with a volatile mix of frayed hope and cold fear. Lisa Carter held her daughter Chloe close, the child's small body trembling against her side. Rex sat pressed against them both, a warm, solid bulwark. Despite his bandaged paws, his posture was rigid, his amber eyes fixed on the passing scenery as if navigating by a map only he could see. Officer Martinez gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, while Chief Harris worked the radio in the passenger seat, his voice a low, constant stream of commands and questions. "Confirm all units, converging on Riverside General. I want a secure perimeter around the ICU entrance. No media, no unauthorized personnel. Is that clear?" Each red light was a fresh agony. Lisa counted them, her knuckles white where she gripped the seat, Rex's warm weight against her the only thing keeping her from screaming. Lisa's mind raced, cycling through a whirlwind of emotions. The crushing grief of the last 3 days, the surreal horror at the cemetery, and now this fragile, terrifying hope. She looked down at Rex, whose head was now resting on her knee, his breath warm through her black dress. He had known. He had always known. "How did this happen?" she asked aloud, her voice barely a whisper over the siren scream. "How could they get it so wrong?" Chief Harris turned in his seat, his expression grim. "The warehouse was a nightmare, Lisa. 3 officers down, multiple suspects firing. Smoke chaos. The EMTs were overwhelmed. 2 victims were pronounced dead at the scene. But in conditions like that..." He shook his head, the guilt etched deeply on his face. "Bodies get moved. Tags can get switched in the confusion. It's a procedural nightmare, but it happens." "Someone should have checked," Lisa said, a sliver of anger piercing through the shock. It was a nurse's anger, the kind that flared when protocols failed and patients suffered. Someone should have made absolutely sure. "You're right," Harris conceded, his shoulders slumping slightly. "This is on us. On me. We trusted a system that broke down under pressure." His admission hung in the air, a heavy truth that did little to comfort anyone. Rex suddenly lifted his head, a low whine building in his throat. He stared intently out the windshield, his body tensing. The hospital was now in sight, a monolithic structure of glass and steel looming against the gray sky. His whine intensified, as if he could already scent his partner on the wind. What was he picking up? Was it Alex's familiar scent or something else? Something dangerous? They screeched to a halt at the trauma center entrance, which was already swarming with police vehicles and officers establishing a perimeter. Dr. Eris Thorne, a man in his 50s with a calm demeanor and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses, was waiting for them. As they piled out of the SUV, a hospital security guard moved to block Rex. "Ma'am, animals aren't allowed inside, especially not in the ICU," the guard stated firmly. Lisa fixed him with a glare that could have melted steel. "This animal is the one who knew my husband wasn't in that coffin. He is a decorated K-9 officer, and he comes with us." Her tone brooked no argument. Dr. Thorne, after a moment's assessment of the determined dog and the even more determined woman, gave a curt nod to the guard, who reluctantly stepped aside. The journey through the sterile, brightly lit corridors was a disorienting blur. The smell of antiseptic replaced the earthy scent of the cemetery, the quiet hum of machinery a stark contrast to the outdoor silence. They moved as a unit, Lisa, Chloe, Rex, Chief Harris, and Dr. Thorne, a small island of intense purpose in the calm, ordered sea of the hospital. "The patient, John Doe 3, has been in a medically induced coma since admission," Dr. Thorne explained as they walked, his voice low. "The head trauma was significant, and he required immediate facial reconstruction surgery. We had no identification. His wallet was missing, and his badge was damaged in the incident." He paused, choosing his words carefully. In the chaos of that night, with multiple critical casualties, the misidentification was plausible. They reached the ICU, a hushed world of beeping monitors and hushed voices. Dr. Thorne led them to a corner room, its large observation window covered by a privacy curtain. Through a narrow gap, Lisa could see a figure in the bed, swathed in bandages, a ventilator tube taped to his mouth, surrounded by a jungle of 4 poles and blinking screens. The shape of the body under the sheet, the set of the shoulders, her breath hitched. "Can I go in?" she asked, though she was already moving. "Of course, but the dog." Dr. Thorne began, but it was too late. Rex pushed past them, his nails clicking on the linoleum floor. He went straight to the bedside, his tail wagging in a frantic, joyous rhythm that was utterly at odds with the clinical setting. He carefully placed his front paws on the bed rail, leaned forward, and sniffed the patient's exposed hand. Then he did something that shattered Lisa's heart and rebuilt it all at once. He laid his head gently on the patient's chest, right over the heart, and let out a soft, whimpering sigh. It was the exact same sound he made every morning when Alex left for work without him, a sound of love, of belonging, of profound connection. "It's him," Lisa whispered, the words a prayer of thanks. She found the patient's hand among the tubes and wires, her fingers closing around it. She knew those hands, the small, faded scar on the left forearm from a long-ago training accident with a nervous stray dog. "It's Alex." They had found him. But were they already too late? But even as a wave of pure relief washed over her, she noticed a change in Rex. The dog was sniffing more intently now, his focus shifting from Alex's face to the 4-port taped to the back of his hand. His loving whimper morphed into a low, suspicious growl. The hair on the back of his neck bristled. "What is it, boy?" Lisa asked, her nurse's training snapping back into hyperfocus. She followed his gaze to the clear plastic 4-bag feeding into her husband's vein. She checked the label, her eyes scanning the small print. Then she checked it again, comparing it to the medication chart clipped to the foot of the bed. A cold dread, entirely separate from the fear of loss, began to creep into her veins. "Doctor," she said, her voice sharp and clear, cutting through the emotional atmosphere. "This medication, this isn't what's listed on his chart." Dr. Thorne stepped forward, frowning. "It should be standard protocol for coma patients. Sedatives, antibiotics." "The concentration is wrong," Lisa interrupted, her finger stabbing at the label. "And there's a smell." She leaned closer to the 4-port, inhaling carefully. Then she jerked back, her eyes wide with horror. "Ethylene glycol. Doctor, I smell antifreeze in this 4-line." The room, once a sanctuary of relief, instantly erupted into a new kind of chaos. The race was not over. They had found Alex, but a new, more insidious enemy had already found him first. The relief that had filled the ICU room just moments before evaporated, replaced by a chilling, clinical horror. Rex's low growl was a red alarm in the hushed space. At Lisa's words, "I smell antifreeze in this line," the room snapped into a new, more dangerous kind of crisis. "Disconnect this line. Now." Dr. Thorne's voice was sharp, all prior calm gone. A nurse swiftly clamped the 4-tube, while another prepared a new, sealed bag of saline. The compromised bag was handled with gloved hands, placed in a clear biohazard bag as potential evidence. Chief Harris was already on his radio, his voice a low, urgent command. "I need a crime scene unit at Riverside General, ICU, room 4. Possible attempted homicide. Secure the entire pharmacy and nursing station." Rex, meanwhile, had not moved from his protective stance. His growl softened, but his body remained tense. His nose still pointed at the now disconnected port as if to say, "The danger is here." It came from here. As Rex sniffed frantically at the port, his tongue darted out, licking at the connection point. His intervention had been so timely, so precise. How could a dog detect what advanced medical equipment and trained human eyes had missed? Lisa's mind, trained for trauma, was already calculating the implications. Ethylene glycol. "It's odorless and colorless in its pure form," she said, thinking aloud. "But some commercial antifreeze mixes have a faintly sweet scent. Rex must have smelled the additive." She looked at the dog with a fresh wave of awe. He didn't just know Alex was alive. He knew he was being poisoned. "How long has he been receiving this?" Lisa demanded, turning to Dr. Thorne. The doctor was already pulling up records on a computer terminal in the room, his face growing paler with each click. 3 days, he said, the words heavy with professional shame. Small, consistent doses mixed with legitimate medications. The concentration was low enough to avoid immediate suspicion from lab tests focused on his trauma. It would have looked like progressive organ failure from his injuries. The horrifying brilliance of the method settled over everyone. It was a silent, patient murder. The timeline was critical. The poison had been systematically attacking Alex's kidneys, and blood was drawn and sent for an urgent toxicology screen. The results came back with terrifying speed. Dangerously elevated levels of ethylene glycol were present in his bloodstream. Not enough to cause immediate obvious death, but a ticking time bomb designed to ensure he would never wake up to testify. "He needs dialysis. Now," Lisa ordered, her voice carrying the absolute authority of her profession. "We have to flush this out of his system before the metabolites cause irreversible damage." As the medical team scrambled to prepare the dialysis machine, wheeling in the complex apparatus of tubes and filters, Detective Reyes returned, her face grim. The nurse who prepared these IVs, a Patricia Coleman, didn't show for her shift this morning. "She's gone." Reyes held up a personnel file. "She started here 6 months ago, transferred from a hospital in Philadelphia. The background check seemed clean at the time." Chief Harris studied the file. "Run her prints. Do a deep dive. Something is very wrong here." In the midst of the controlled chaos, Rex finally settled. He lay down on the floor beside Alex's bed, his head on his paws, but his eyes remained open, tracking every person who entered or left the room. He was a silent, furry sentinel. When a new, thoroughly vetted nurse arrived to help with the dialysis setup, Rex watched her every move, a low rumble in his chest until Lisa gave him a reassuring pat. His trust, once given, was absolute, but his vigilance was now permanently heightened. The rhythmic whir of the dialysis machine began, a sound of hope fighting against the poison. It would take hours to clean Alex's blood, but it was a battle they could now fight. Lisa held Alex's hand, her thumb stroking his skin, while Chloe, exhausted, curled up in a chair and fell into a fitful sleep. "Why?" Lisa asked, looking from Harris to Reyes. "Why go to all this trouble? The misidentification. Now this. Why not just finish the job at the warehouse?" Harris and Reyes exchanged a loaded glance. "The warehouse raid," Reyes said slowly. "It was supposed to be a routine warrant, but we got a last-minute tip. Marco Valles was supposed to be there." Lisa's blood ran cold. Marco Velez was a notorious name, a major player in an interstate drug and weapons ring. Alex was the lead investigator, she breathed. He was building the case. The star witness, Harris confirmed grimly. With him dead, especially from his injuries, the case likely collapses. But if he died under suspicious circumstances right after the shooting, it might raise flags. This way. He gestured to the dialysis machine. It looks natural. A coma patient succumbing to complications. It's clean. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. The chaos of the shooting had been the perfect cover. First, to misidentify him and declare him dead, giving his family and the department closure. Then, to quietly eliminate the actual witness in a hospital bed while his family mourned an empty casket. It was a cold, calculated, and nearly perfect plan. "Find Patricia Coleman," Lisa said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Find her now." As if summoned by her command, Rex's head snapped up. He looked toward the door, his ears pivoting forward like radar dishes. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from his chest, a sound entirely different from his earlier warning. This wasn't suspicion. This was recognition. This was a direct threat. The door handle began to turn. Everyone in the room froze. Chief Harris's hand moved to his service weapon. Detective Reyes shifted her stance, ready to move. The medical staff paused, their training not covering this. The door swung open to reveal a woman in blue scrubs, a medical tray in her hands. Her ID badge clipped to her chest read, "Patricia Coleman, RN." Her expression was one of professional neutrality until her eyes took in the room full of police officers, the active dialysis machine, and the German shepherd rising to its feet, teeth bared. Her eyes widened in shock for a split second, then narrowed into a look of cold, sharp calculation. Her gaze darted around the room, assessing escape routes. The game was up, and she knew it. Rex took a step forward, placing himself squarely between the nurse and Alex's bed. The snarl that ripped from his throat was primal, a promise of violence if she took another step. The confrontation they had raced toward was here. The hunter had just walked into the lair of the protectors. The sterile hospital room froze. Patricia Coleman stood in the doorway, her eyes locked on the snarling dog and the drawn weapons. The medical tray in her hands trembled slightly. "Nobody move," Chief Harris commanded, his voice low and steady, his service weapon held in a controlled, two-handed grip. "Patricia Coleman, step away from the tray and keep your hands where I can see them." Instead of complying, her hand slipped into the pocket of her scrubs. "Slowly remove your hand from your pocket, ma'am," Detective Reyes ordered, flanking her from the left. A cold, unnerving smile stretched across Patricia's face. It didn't reach her eyes, which were flat and dead. "You know I always hated dogs," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Especially the smart ones." Her hand emerged from her pocket, holding not a weapon, but a large syringe filled with a clear liquid. She pressed the tip against the vein in her own neck. "Take one more step, and this goes in my neck. I'll be dead before I hit the floor, and you'll have nothing." The room froze. This was a contingency they hadn't anticipated. Rex's growl deepened, a continuous, vibrating threat, but he held his position, a coiled spring of muscle and instinct, waiting for an opening. "Let's talk about this," Harris said, switching to his hostage negotiator cadence. "Nobody needs to die today. Put the syringe down, and we can discuss this." Patricia let out a bitter, sharp laugh. "Tell that to my brother, Miguel Velez. You people gunned him down like a dog 2 years ago. Said he was reaching for a weapon." Her grip on the syringe tightened, the plastic creaking. "He was reaching for his inhaler. He was asthmatic." Lisa, shielding Chloe behind her, found her voice. "So you tried to kill my husband? He wasn't even involved in your brother's case." "But Marco was," Patricia spat, her composure cracking to reveal the festering hatred beneath. "Our cousin. The only family I have left. Your husband's testimony would put him away for life. I couldn't let that happen." Her eyes flicked to the disconnected for pump. It was supposed to look natural. Organ failure from his injuries. You weren't supposed to find out. Rex, reading some invisible shift in her body language, suddenly changed tactics. The ferocious snarling stopped. Rex let out a sharp, pained yelp, a sound Alex had only heard when he was genuinely hurt, and collapsed onto his side, clutching one of his bandaged front paws with his teeth and whining pitifully. It was a performance of pure agony, so convincing that for a split second, even Lisa felt a jolt of concern. It was that split second that mattered. Patricia's eyes, driven by a nurse's ingrained instinct to assess injury, flicked down to the dog. Her attention wavered. It was less than a heartbeat, but it was enough. Zap. The twin probes of Detective Reyes's taser found their mark in Patricia's shoulder. Her body convulsed violently, the syringe dropping from her numb fingers and skittering harmlessly across the linoleum. She crumpled to the floor, twitching. Officers swarmed in, securing her hands with zip ties, while a medical team stood by. As soon as Patricia was restrained, Rex was back on his feet, his tail giving a single, satisfied wag as he returned to his post beside Alex's bed. He looked up at Lisa, as if to say, "See? I told you I could handle it." "Did that dog just fake an injury to create a distraction?" Dr. Thorne asked, his voice full of incredulous wonder. A small, tearful laugh escaped Lisa as she knelt to hug Rex. "He's done it before in training. Alex taught him. Sometimes the best offense is pretending you're too hurt to have one." With the immediate threat neutralized, the investigation exploded outward. Patricia Coleman's real name was Patricia Velez. She had assumed the identity of a deceased nurse from Philadelphia, using forged documents to get hired at Riverside General specifically for access to the ICU. She had been patient, waiting for the right opportunity, and the chaos of the warehouse raid had provided the perfect cover. "She's been dosing him for 3 days, Dr. Thorne confirmed after a frantic review of the digital records. Small amounts mixed with legitimate medications. It was brilliant, actually. Evil but brilliant. The slow accumulation would have been attributed to his trauma. We never would have caught it in time without." He gestured at Rex, who was now accepting gentle scratches behind the ear from a relieved Chloe. The dialysis machine continued its life-saving work, whirring steadily. The poison was being purged. But the battle wasn't over. "What's his prognosis now?" Lisa asked, her hand finding Alex's again. "The good news is we caught it just in time," Dr. Thorne said. "Kidney function is impaired, but not destroyed. With aggressive treatment, he should make a full physical recovery. But we need to bring him out of the coma soon to assess any neurological impact." "Do it," Lisa said without hesitation. "He's strong. He'll fight." As medical staff prepared to reduce the sedatives, a new, disturbing update came in. A review of hospital records, triggered by the incident, revealed 3 other patients in different wards. All witnesses in cases connected to the Velez organization showed similar, subtle signs of poisoning. Patricia Velez had been systematic, using her position to slowly eliminate multiple threats to her family's empire. "This is bigger than one rogue nurse," Chief Harris said grimly. "The Velez organization has tentacles everywhere. Even with her in custody, Alex isn't safe." The truth was a cold shackle. They had won the skirmish, but the war was far from over. As the process of waking Alex began, Rex, his paws freshly rebandaged by a hospital-supplied vet, refused to leave his side. He lay on the floor, a guardian at the gate, his watchful eyes missing nothing. The bond between man and dog, tested in fire and poison, was now a shield no enemy could easily break. The process of bringing Alex back from the depths of a medically induced coma was a delicate, nerve-wracking counterpoint to the violent confrontation that had just occurred. The machines continued their steady beeping, but now the focus shifted from fighting poison to nurturing consciousness. Dr. Thorne and his team meticulously adjusted the 4 drips, slowly decreasing the powerful sedatives that had kept Alex's brain in stasis. Lisa held Alex's hand, her thumb tracing slow circles on his skin. Chloe, now awake, sat on the edge of the bed, her small hand resting on her father's arm. Rex lay on the floor beside them, his head up, his entire being focused on the man in the bed. His earlier ferocity was gone, replaced by an intense, quiet vigilance. He seemed to understand that a different kind of fight was now underway. For hours, there was little change. Then, as afternoon faded into evening, the first signs emerged. A twitch in Alex's fingers, a faint flutter beneath his eyelids. Rex was the first to react, his ears pricking forward, a soft whine escaping him. He stood up and carefully rested his chin on the mattress, his nose inches from Alex's face. His brain activity is increasing significantly, Dr. Thorne announced, watching the EEG monitor. He's fighting the sedation. That's an excellent sign. Lisa leaned closer, her voice a gentle murmur. Alex, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. The pressure was weak, a faint pulse of movement against her palm, but it was unmistakable. A tear traced a path down Lisa's cheek. Across the bed, Chloe gasped. Daddy's hand moved. Rex's tail began to thump softly against the floor, a steady, rhythmic beat of encouragement. He nudged Alex's hand with his wet nose, licking the fingers that lay exposed among the tubes and tape. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Alex's eyelids fluttered open. They were unfocused, clouded with confusion and drugs, blinking against the dimmed lights of the room. His gaze drifted, lost, until it found Lisa's face. A flicker of recognition. Then it moved to Chloe, and a little more light seemed to enter his eyes. Finally, with visible effort, he looked down and saw Rex. Alex's hazy eyes found Rex's. A weak, trembling hand lifted from the sheet. Rex met him halfway, pushing his head into the familiar touch, a soft whimper shaking his entire body. Alex's fingers weakly scratched behind the dog's ear, their old, cherished greeting. It was a gesture so normal, so deeply ingrained in their daily routine, that it felt like a miracle in the sterile room. You're safe, Lisa whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You're in the hospital. There was a mix-up. But Rex found you. Rex saved you. Alex's eyes, still hazy, held Rex's gaze, and the gratitude in them was a tangible force. The ventilator tube prevented him from speaking, but he didn't need words. The slight curve of his lips and the continued scratching behind Rex's ear said everything. Dr. Thorne conducted a series of neurological checks, shining a light in his eyes, asking him to track a finger. Responses are good. Pupils are reactive. Motor function, while weak, is present. All signs are positive. We'll keep him on the ventilator for a little while longer to let his body adjust. But this is a tremendous turn. He smiled, a genuine, relieved expression. Your dog is quite remarkable, Officer Carter. He detected something our most advanced machinery missed. Over the next few hours, the full, horrifying story was pieced together for Alex. Through writing on a tablet and yes or no questions, they explained the funeral, the wrong body in the casket, the race to the hospital, and the discovery of the poison. Alex's memory of the shooting was fragmented. Flashes of muzzle flare in a dark warehouse, the weight of his vest, the impact, and then nothing but vague, distorted sounds. The scratch of the stylus on the tablet was the only sound in the room as he wrote. I heard him. Howling. Lisa's breath caught. The doctors said that was impossible. You were too deeply sedated. Alex managed a weak, almost imperceptible shrug. Then he wrote another word. Scratching. A chill went through the room. He had been aware, trapped in the unresponsive prison of his own body, hearing his own funeral, hearing his dog's desperate attempts to reach him. It was a psychological horror none of them could fully comprehend. Rex, seeming to understand, whined softly and licked Alex's hand again, as if trying to wipe away the terrible memory. The following day, the ventilator was removed. Alex's voice was raw, little more than a raspy whisper, but it was his. His first clear word was, Rex. The dog, who had barely slept, thumped his tail so hard his whole body wriggled. He carefully placed his head on Alex's chest, right over his heart, and closed his eyes, finally allowing himself a moment of true rest now that his partner could speak his name. But the peace was fragile. Chief Harris entered with an update. The morgue has admitted fault. In the chaos, with 2 officers killed and multiple casualties, bodies were misidentified. You and David Torres were brought in minutes apart, both with severe facial trauma. Someone made a catastrophic assumption. Protocols will be changed. This will never happen again. Yet, even as Alex grew stronger, new threats emerged. Word of Patricia Valles's arrest had reached the organization. Increased security was posted, but Rex remained the most effective early warning system. He alerted to a deliverman with a fake ID and a janitor, whose fingerprints linked to a known Valles enforcer. "We need to move him," Chief Harris decided after the second incident. A secure wing. Limited access. The transfer happened in the dead of night. Rex, despite his exhaustion, rode on the gurney with Alex, refusing to be separated even for a moment. As they settled into the new, more fortified room, Rex's behavior changed again. He began sniffing the air intently, his focus zeroing in on the ventilation grate. A low, concerned whine built in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Alex asked, his voice still weak but clear. Rex looked at the vent, then back at Alex, and whined again. Lisa, remembering his past alerts, didn't hesitate. "Clear the room. Now." Security responded instantly. The vent was checked, and traces of sevoflurane, an anesthetic gas, were found. Someone had tried to pump a sedative through the ventilation system. Not enough to kill, but enough to incapacitate the guards and medical staff, making Alex an easy target. "They're not giving up," Harris said, his face grim. "We need to be smarter." Through it all, Rex remained the steadfast guardian. He had found Alex against impossible odds, detected a poison no machine could, helped capture an assassin, and now had identified an airborne threat. But the relentless pressure was taking its toll. The hero who had saved his partner was now fighting his own silent battle. The cost of the rescue was written in the weary slump of his shoulders, and the way he sometimes struggled to catch his breath. The secure wing of Riverside General was a fortress, but the most dangerous enemy had already breached its walls from within. The threat wasn't a person. It was microscopic, insidious, and coursing through the veins of their bravest protector. The relentless pressure, the physical trauma, and the toxic poison he had ingested to save Alex had pushed Rex's body to its absolute limit. It began subtly, a slight decrease in appetite that Lisa initially attributed to stress. A little less energy during his brief walks down the hospital corridor. But then, in the pre-dawn darkness of their third day in the secure wing, the subtle signs became a crisis. Alex was woken not by a nurse's check or a machine's alarm, but by the sound of Rex whimpering. It was a raw, pained sound he had never heard from his partner before. In the dim light from the hallway, he saw Rex's silhouette. The dog was trembling, his body rigid, struggling to draw a full breath. "Rex." Alex's voice was laced with sleep and sudden fear. He pushed himself up, ignoring the protest in his own healing body. "What's wrong, boy?" Rex tried to stand to come to him, but stumbled, his bandaged paws sliding on the smooth floor. His breathing was labored, each exhale a soft whine of distress. Lisa, sleeping in the recliner beside the bed, was awake in an instant. "Call Dr. Morrison," Alex said urgently, his hand finding Rex's head, which was hot to the touch. "Something's really wrong." Dr. Angela Morrison, the veterinarian, arrived with a haste that spoke of her respect for her patient. Her examination in the quiet room was gentle but thorough. Rex, ever the professional, submitted to her touch, but his eyes remained fixed on Alex. When she drew blood, her expression was grim. She compared the new vials to the ones taken days earlier. The blood tests from his last checkup. She began, her tone carefully controlled. "I was concerned about his liver enzymes. They're significantly worse. He has acute liver damage, and it's progressing rapidly." "From the stress?" "His injuries?" Lisa asked, clutching Chloe's hand. Dr. Morrison shook her head, her kind eyes filled with a painful truth. "When Rex detected the ethylene glycol in your four, Alex, he did more than just smell it. Dogs investigate with their mouths. He likely ingested small amounts while trying to alert everyone, combined with the extreme physical and emotional stress, the lack of rest." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. His liver is failing. Alex's face crumpled. He bent over Rex, his shoulders shaking with a silent, guilty sob. Rex, who had saved him from being buried alive, who had detected a poison designed to be undetectable, was now dying because of it. The dog lay between them, his amber eyes still alert and fixed on his partner, even as his body betrayed him. "No," Chloe whispered, her small voice fierce with denial. "No, Max can't die. He saved Daddy. It's not fair." She buried her face in Rex's fur, and the dog, despite his own suffering, managed a weak lick of her hand. "Treatment options?" Alex asked, his voice cracking, his hand never stopping its gentle stroking of Rex's head. "Supportive care. For fluids to flush his system, medications to support liver function, a special diet." Dr. Morrison's professional demeanor wavered. "But Alex, the damage is extensive. We're looking at a very tough fight. We have to be realistic." "I want him here," Alex said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "Whatever treatment he needs, he gets it here. He doesn't leave my side." Chief Harris, who had arrived for the morning security briefing, stepped forward. "The department will cover every cost. That dog is a hero. Whatever he needs, it's his." They set up a veterinary treatment station right beside Alex's hospital bed. Soon, Rex was connected to his own 4 lines, a mirror image of his partner. The bitter irony was a heavy presence in the room. The dog who had identified a poison for now depended on the same technology for his own survival. Over the next 48 hours, Rex's condition deteriorated despite their best efforts. His once glossy coat grew dull and rough. He lost weight, his ribs beginning to show. He still tried to maintain his watch, lifting his head weakly whenever someone entered, but the effort was immense. His eyes, though clouded with pain, never lost their devotion whenever they looked at Alex. "He's still trying to protect you," Lisa observed, her heart breaking as she watched Rex struggle to alert when a new nurse arrived. Even now, Alex couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He had lost human partners before, but this was a different kind of pain. Rex had chosen him. After losing his first handler, after months of grief, he had chosen to trust again, and this was his reward, a slow, painful decline. "I should have seen it sooner," Alex whispered, stroking Rex's head. "I should have known he was sick." Rex's tail moved slightly, a faint thump against the blankets. It was an acknowledgement, a forgiveness Alex didn't feel he deserved. His eyes held Alex's with an expression of such pure, selfless love that everyone in the room had to look away. Dr. Thorne entered with Alex's latest test results. "Your kidney function is almost back to normal. You'll be ready for discharge in a couple of days. We can postpone the trial until you're stronger." "The trial can wait," Alex interrupted, his gaze fixed on Rex. "I'm not leaving him." That evening, as the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, Rex seemed to rally. He managed to eat a few bites of boiled chicken that Chloe hand-fed him. When Walter Brennan visited with stories of his old war dog, Duke, Rex's tail wagged with a little more strength. "Duke saved 12 men in my unit," Walter said, his weathered hands gentle on Rex's fur. "But you know what I remember most? Not the heroics. It was the quiet moments. The way he'd lean against you during watch. How he knew when you needed comfort without a single word." As if on cue, Rex pressed his muzzle into Alex's hand, a simple gesture of connection that said more than any words could. It was in that quiet moment that Alex made a decision. He looked at Lisa, then at Rex. "I want to take him home," he said. "Whatever time he has left, he should spend it at home. Not in this place." The logistics were a nightmare. Alex still needed oversight. Rex needed constant care. The threat from the Valles organization was still very real. But Chief Harris made it happen. But could a home, even one filled with love, be enough to win a battle that medicine was losing? The medical transport that carried Alex and Rex from the hospital was a world away from the frantic police SUV of days prior. This journey was slow, careful, and filled with a quiet, determined hope. Rex, nestled on a padded gurney beside Alex's wheelchair, seemed to understand the significance of the trip. As they turned onto their familiar street, His tail thumped weakly against the blankets, and he lifted his head to sniff the air, a spark of his old vitality returning to his eyes. Their house, once a place of unspeakable grief, was now a sanctuary prepared for healing. The porch light was on, a golden beacon in the twilight. Officers from the department had already set up a secure perimeter, their presence a necessary shadow. But inside, the atmosphere was one of pure love. Rex's bed was waiting by the large living room window, surrounded by his favorite toys. Chloe had taped her drawings of a superhero dog wearing a cape to the wall above it. Super Rex, she had labeled them in wobbly letters. As Alex was carefully helped inside, Rex insisted on walking, supported by a sling under his belly held by Lisa and a veterinary technician. He managed a few shaky steps across the threshold. His nose twitched, taking in the familiar sense of home, of his family, of his own territory. He looked at his bed, then at the couch where he wasn't supposed to sleep but always did. Rex took one deep, shuddering breath, inhaling the scent of home, and finally, his body relaxed into a sleep deeper than any he'd had in the hospital. They settled Rex into his bed by the window, where he could see the backyard, the scene of countless training sessions and games of fetch. Alex, still weak, lowered himself to the floor beside him, refusing the comfort of the couch. "We're in this together, partner," he whispered, his hand finding its familiar place on Rex's head. The first few days were a delicate ballet of care. Alex's physical therapy exercises were done on the floor next to Rex. Lisa, on leave from the hospital, became the chief medical officer for both her patients, administering Rex's liver support medications and 4 fluids with the same precision she used for Alex's antibiotics. Chloe took her role as morale officer seriously, reading to Rex from her picture books and ensuring he never felt alone. It was during this time that Chief Harris arrived with a surprise. "I know it might seem soon," he said a little awkwardly, holding a small carrier. But the department thought this might help with Rex's recovery and for the future. He opened the carrier, and a tiny, wriggling black and tan German Shepherd puppy tumbled out, tripping over her own oversized paws. The puppy, named Hope, surveyed the room with wide, curious eyes. She approached Rex's bed with instinctive respect, sniffing the air, then giving a small, respectful yip. Rex, who had been sleeping, lifted his head. Instead of annoyance, his expression was one of interest. He gave a soft, low woof, a sound of approval. Hope, emboldened, curled up a few feet away from him, keeping watch. "He's teaching her," Lisa marveled later, as they watched Hope mimic Rex's alert posture when a car passed outside. Even now, he's still on the job. Rex's recovery was not linear. There were bad days, days of lethargy, of refusing food, of visible discomfort. But there were also small, miraculous victories. The day he managed to walk to the back door on his own. The day he playfully nudged his empty food bowl across the kitchen floor. The day he brought Alex a slobber-covered tennis ball, dropping it in his lap with a look that clearly said, "Okay, let's get back to work." Dr. Morrison made regular house calls, her prognosis growing cautiously optimistic. "His liver enzymes are improving," she announced after one blood test, a genuine smile on her face. "It's slow, but it's happening. The home environment, the lack of stress, your care, it's making all the difference. He's a fighter." The secure detail remained, and Rex, even in his weakened state, was their most reliable asset. He developed a new alert system, one sharp bark for cleared visitors, 2 for strangers, and that same low, guttural growl for danger. He alerted them to a suspicious van casing the house, leading to the arrest of another Valles associate. His instincts were as sharp as ever. One morning, about 3 weeks after coming home, Alex woke to find Rex standing by his side of the bed. It was 5:30 a.m., their old time for morning runs. Rex wasn't asking for a run, he was just there, his tail wagging slowly, ready to start their day together. It was a moment of profound normalcy that felt like a victory. "Okay, boy," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's go watch the sunrise." They sat together on the porch, Alex in a chair, Rex lying at his feet, Hope curled between them. The sky over the Denver suburbs blushed, with shades of pink and orange. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, a world away from gunfire in hospital rooms and poisoned IVs. The trial of Marco Velez was fast-tracked. With Patricia's confession and the evidence gathered, the case was strong. Alex provided a sealed deposition from home, his testimony powerful and clear. The threat began to recede, like a tide pulling back from the shore. The security detail was gradually scaled down. As Rex grew stronger, he and Hope developed an inseparable bond. He taught her the basics, how to track a scent, how to alert, when to be gentle with Chloe. She learned by watching him, and he seemed to draw energy from her youthful exuberance. The old warrior and the young recruit. One evening, as the family sat in the living room, Rex got up, walked over to his toy basket, and after a moment of rummaging, pulled out his most prized possession, a frayed, well-chewed tennis ball. Rex nudged the frayed tennis ball with his nose, pushing it toward Hope's feet. Then he lay down, watching her, his tail thumping once on the floor in approval. He was telling her that the work would go on, that the family would always be protected. But it wasn't a goodbye. It was an invitation to stand watch together. Hope picked up the ball, her tail wagging furiously, and Rex's tail thumped in response. The partnership had expanded. The pack had grown. The nightmare was finally truly over. The future, once a terrifying blank, was now filled with the simple, beautiful promise of more days like this. More sunrises, more tennis balls, more family. Rex had not just survived. He had ensured they would all thrive together. The crisp autumn air that filled the Carter backyard was a far cry from the sterile hospital atmosphere of months past. It was now a training ground, a place where the past and future of the K-9 unit were beginning to intersect. Rex, his strength returning day by day, was no longer just a patient. He was rediscovering his purpose as a teacher. Hope, the energetic puppy, was all potential and unbridled enthusiasm. She chased leaves with the same ferocity she might one day chase a suspect, her attention span fleeting. At first, she would watch Rex's calm, deliberate movements with curiosity. Then, she began to mimic him. Rex would lie in a sunbeam, and Hope would mirror his posture exactly, down to the placement of his paws. When Alex hit a training scent, a piece of cloth with a specific essential oil, for Hope to find, Rex would often amble over and stand near the hiding spot, not alerting, but simply watching her. When she grew frustrated and started barking, he would give a single sharp woof, a correction that seemed to say, "Use your nose, not your voice." One afternoon, Alex set up a simple tracking exercise in the yard. He dragged the scent cloth along a faint path through the fallen leaves. Hope, excited, burst forward, her nose to the ground, but her pace too fast, missing subtle turns. Rex, off-leash, followed at a slow walk. He wasn't tracking the scent, he was tracking Hope. When she lost the trail, circling in confusion, Rex did something remarkable. He walked to a specific point where the trail veered left, sat down, and looked directly at her. He didn't make a sound. Hope, noticing him, trotted over, sniffed the ground where he was sitting, and immediately picked up the scent again, her tail wagging with renewed focus. She had learned to trust a silent marker. "He's not just training her," Lisa observed, watching from the porch with Leo in her arms. "He's programming her. He's building the foundation of her instincts." Alex nodded, a swell of pride in his chest. Chun trained him with compassion and patience. He's passing that on. He's showing her that the work is about thinking, not just reacting. The looming trial of Marco Velez cast a long shadow over their domestic peace. While the direct threats had lessened, the security detail was a constant reminder that the danger wasn't entirely gone. Chief Harris implemented a new protocol. Hope, despite being a puppy, was to be included in security sweeps of the property. It was a way to socialize her to the work and to see how Rex would handle a junior partner. The first time officers did a perimeter check, Hope bounced around their feet, a playful nuisance. Rex watched her for a moment, then fell into step beside Detective Reyes. He walked the entire fence line with her, his head on a swivel, demonstrating the methodical, calm vigilance required. On the next check, Hope walked beside him, her energy more contained, her eyes beginning to scan rather than just see. The true test of Rex's mentorship came unexpectedly. A new officer, young and eager to meet the legendary K9, arrived for duty. He approached the house with a brisk, confident stride. Hope, unsure, let out a series of uncertain barks. Rex, however, remained seated on the porch, his body relaxed, but his eyes fixed on the stranger. He let out a single low woof, not a threat, but a clear, confident alert. "I see you. You are recognized." The officer stopped, smiled, and gave Rex a respectful nod. Hope, watching the interaction, fell silent. She had just learned a crucial lesson in discernment. Not every stranger is a threat, but every stranger should be acknowledged and assessed. Later that week, Alex brought out Rex's old harness, the one he hadn't worn since before the warehouse raid. He held it up. Rex's ears pricked forward, and his tail gave a slow, thoughtful wag. He looked at the harness, then at Hope, and then back at Alex. He took a step forward and nudged the harness with his nose, then looked pointedly at Hope. As Alex fastened the oversized harness on Hope, he noticed it. Rex's alert was no longer for the field, but for the future he saw in his protege. He wasn't rejecting the symbol of his old life. He was acknowledging that it was time to pass it on. He was voluntarily stepping aside, confident that his protege was on the right path. "Okay, boy," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "I understand." He knelt and showed the harness to Hope. She sniffed it intently, picking up the scent of leather, sweat, and Rex. Alex carefully fastened it on her. It was too big, comically so, but she stood proudly, as if feeling the weight of the responsibility it represented. Rex walked over, gave her a thorough sniff from head to tail, and then let out a soft, approving rumble. He lay down nearby, his watchful eyes on her, as if standing guard over the next generation. The partnership was evolving, the bond extending. Rex had ensured his partner's survival. Now, he was ensuring the legacy of their work would live on, strong and true. The cheerful autumn colors faded, replaced by the bare, gray branches of winter, mirroring the anxiety settling in Alex's gut. The trial date for Marco Valles was set, a dark mark on the calendar that loomed over their hard-won peace. The security detail, which had slowly scaled back, was reinforced. The world outside their home was once again a place of potential threats. Alex spent hours with the district attorney, reviewing his testimony. The process was mentally exhausting, forcing him to relive the warehouse shooting in vivid, painful detail. The flash of gunfire, the smell of cordite, the weight of his fallen colleague. He would return from these sessions quiet and withdrawn, the ghost of the ordeal haunting his eyes. Rex, attuned to his partner's emotional state, developed a new routine. On days when Alex had pre-trial meetings, the dog would be waiting by the door upon his return. He wouldn't demand play or a walk. Instead, he would follow Alex to the sofa, press his head firmly against his leg, and remain there, a solid, warm weight grounding him to the present. It was a silent therapy, a canine remedy for a human pain no medicine could touch. Hope, now 6 months old and all legs and earnest energy, seemed to sense the heightened tension. Her training intensified under Rex's watchful eye. Alex began running drills with her in the backyard, simulating evidence searches and suspect apprehensions. Rex would observe from his sunny spot, occasionally offering a corrective bark if Hope's focus wavered. His mentorship was now active and vocal. The most significant test came during a mock building search. Alex hid in the darkened garage, playing the role of a suspect. Hope, tasked with finding him, entered with eager barks. But as the door closed, plunging her into semi-darkness, she hesitated, her confidence faltering. She whined, circling nervously. From outside, Rex let out a single, sharp, command-like bark. It wasn't a sound of alarm, but of instruction. Hope's ears swiveled. She stopped whining, sniffed the air deeply, and moments later, tracked Alex to his hiding spot behind a stack of boxes. When she emerged, wagging her tail proudly, Rex was waiting. He gave her a approving nudge with his nose, a gesture of high praise. He had taught her to push through fear and trust her training. A few months ago he was fighting for his life, Lisa said to Chief Harris, who was observing the session. Now he's shaping his successor. It's incredible. It's his legacy, Harris replied, his gaze thoughtful. He knows what's at stake with this trial. He's ensuring the work continues, with or without him in the field. He paused. We'll have security at the courthouse, of course. But having Rex there for Alex's testimony, it could be a powerful grounding presence for both of them. The idea was unorthodox, but after review with the judge and a check of Rex's impeccable service record, it was approved. Rex would be allowed to accompany Alex into the witness box as a certified comfort animal, his presence a silent testament to the very loyalty the Wallace organization had sought to destroy. The night before the trial, a heavy silence fell over the house. Even hope was subdued. Alex was too keyed up to sleep. He found himself in the living room, staring out at the moonlit yard. Rex padded in and sat beside him, leaning his full weight against Alex's side. You ready for this, boy? Alex whispered, his hand finding the familiar spot behind Rex's ear. Time to finally close this book. Rex responded with a deep, calm sigh, as if exhaling the collective anxiety of the past months. He rested his head on Alex's knee, his steady breathing a rhythmic counterpoint to Alex's racing thoughts. In that quiet moment, the pre-trial jitters began to settle. They had faced death together and won. They could face a courtroom. The morning of the trial dawned cold and clear. Alex dressed in his formal uniform, the fabric feeling strangely stiff. He clipped a leash to Rex's collar, not for control, but for protocol. Rex walked beside him with a quiet dignity, his head held high. Hope, sensing the gravity of the day, sat perfectly by the door and watched them leave, her training telling her to hold the fort. The drive to the courthouse was a silent one. Police motorcycles escorted their vehicle, a show of force meant to deter any last-minute attempts at intimidation. As they pulled up to the grand, imposing building, Alex felt a knot of tension in his stomach. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. But as he stepped out of the car, with Rex a solid, unwavering presence at his side, the noise seemed to fade. He looked down at his partner, at the intelligent, calm eyes that had seen him through so much, and his own resolve hardened. This wasn't just about testifying against a criminal. It was about honoring the partnership that had brought him here. It was about looking into the eyes of the man who ordered his death and showing him that he had failed. The bond between man and dog had become their armor, and today they would wear it into battle one last time. The courthouse was a fortress of stone and solemnity, a world away from the warehouses and hospital rooms that had defined their ordeal. As Alex walked through the metal detectors, Rex at his heel, the weight of the institution settled upon him. The air was cool, still, and smelled of old wood and floor polish. It was a place of words, of procedure, a stark contrast to the violent chaos that had brought them here. They were led to a small, windowless waiting room. The only sound was the rustle of Lisa's dress as she sat beside him, taking his hand. Rex sat on the floor, pressed against Alex's leg, a living, breathing anchor in the stagnant silence. He didn't pant or whine. He was a statue of calm, his presence a steadying force that kept Alex from being swept away by a riptide of memories. When the bailiff called his name, Alex stood, his knees feeling weak. He entered the courtroom, and 100 eyes turned to him. He saw the stern faces of the jury, the curious onlookers, and then, at the defense table, Marco Valles. The man's expression was cold, impassive, but his eyes held a flicker of something dark and calculating. For a terrifying second, Alex was back in the warehouse, hearing the crack of gunfire. Then he felt a gentle nudge against his hand. Rex walked at a perfect heel, his shoulder pressed against Alex's leg, a steady, living pressure. He looked up at Alex, his gaze clear and steady. I'm here. We do this together. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, gave a small, approving nod as Alex took the stand and Rex settled at his feet, out of the jury's line of sight, but touching Alex's shoe. The prosecutor's questions were straightforward, guiding Alex through the investigation. Alex's voice was firm as he detailed the evidence against Valles. But when she asked him to describe the night of the raid, his throat tightened. He spoke of the darkness, the confusion, the moment of impact. His hand, resting on his knee, began to tremble. Rex, sensing the shift, lifted his head and rested his muzzle on Alex's leg. The weight and warmth were immediate, a tactile reminder of the present. Alex took a deep breath, his fingers curling into Rex's fur, and continued, his voice regaining its strength. Then came the cross-examination. Valessa's defense attorney, a sleek man with a condescending smile, approached. He tried to pick apart Alex's testimony, implying the misidentification at the morgue cast doubt on his entire account, suggesting the trauma had clouded his memory. "Isn't it true, Officer Carter, that you have no direct memory of seeing my client at the warehouse?" the lawyer pressed, his voice slick. "Your identification is based on intelligence, not sight. And given the traumatic nature of your injuries and the subsequent dramatic events at the cemetery, can you be sure of anything from that night?" Alex felt a flush of anger. He was about to retort when Rex, who had been still and silent, let out the softest of growls. It was so low only Alex could feel the vibration through his leg. The dog's eyes were fixed not on the lawyer, but on Marco Valles, who had allowed a thin, cold smile to touch his lips. Rex had seen it. He had recognized the smugness of a man who thought he was winning. The growl was a jolt of clarity. Alex leaned into the microphone, his voice cold and sharp. "I'm sure of the evidence my team gathered. I'm sure of the poison your client's cousin put in my four. And I am absolutely sure of my partner, who, unlike any person in this room, knew I was alive when everyone else had given me up for dead. My memory of that is perfectly clear." A ripple went through the courtroom. The lawyer was momentarily speechless. The jury looked from Alex's determined face to the dog at his feet. The narrative had shifted from the word of one man to the unwavering loyalty of a partnership that had defied death itself. The defense had no more questions. As Alex stepped down from the stand, he felt a profound exhaustion, but also a cleansing relief. He had faced the man who ordered his death and had not broken. He had told the truth, with his best friend by his side. Outside the courtroom, in the echoing marble hallway, Lisa hugged him tightly. "You were amazing," she whispered. "We were," Alex corrected, kneeling to wrap his arms around Rex. "We did it, boy. It's over." Rex wagged his tail, licking Alex's face, his job complete. The final enemy had not been faced with fists or guns, but with truth and the unshakable bond that had brought them both back from the edge. The shadow of the trial had passed, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt truly, completely bright. The days following Alex's testimony were in agonizing limbo. The case went to the jury, and the Carter household fell into a state of suspended animation. The normal rhythms of life, meals, walks, playtime with hope, felt like motions they were going through, their real lives on pause, waiting for a verdict that would define their future. The security detail remained, a constant reminder that the threat was not yet fully extinguished. Rex, sensing the heightened anxiety, became Alex's shadow more than ever. If Alex paced, Rex paced with him. If Alex sat staring into space, Rex would lay his head in his lap, his warm, brown eyes pulling his partner back from the edge of worry. Hope, picking up on the tense atmosphere, was uncharacteristically subdued. Her playful barks were quieter, her romps in the yard less frantic. She spent more time curled near Rex, as if drawing calm from his steady presence. The two dogs, the veteran and the rookie, became a single unit of quiet vigilance, guarding their family not from a physical intruder, but from the creeping tendrils of fear. On the third day of deliberations, Chief Harris called. "The jury is coming back. We need to head to the courthouse." The drive was silent, the air in the car thick with unspoken dread and hope. This time, the entire family went. Lisa held Alex's hand, her grip tight. Chloe, understanding the gravity, stared solemnly out the window. Rex sat between Alex and Lisa, a solid, living barrier against the unknown. The courtroom felt even more crowded and tense than before. As they filed in, Alex's eyes met Marco Vales's across the room. The man's cold mask was still in place, But Alex saw a new tension around his eyes. The confidence had been replaced by a simmering, contained fury. He knew the truth was closing in. The jury entered, their faces unreadable. The judge asked for the verdict. The world seemed to shrink to the foreman of the jury, a middle-aged man holding a single piece of paper. On the count of attempted murder of a police officer, we the jury find the defendant, Marco Velez, guilty. A collective gasp, then a wave of murmurs swept the room. Lisa squeezed Alex's hand so hard it hurt. Chloe let out a small, happy sob. The foreman continued, his voice steady, listing charge after charge. Conspiracy, drug trafficking, weapons violations. Each guilty was a hammer blow, shattering the organization that had torn their lives apart. With each verdict, the air left Alex's lungs in a long, slow sigh, a tension he'd carried for a year uncoiling from his shoulders. When the final guilty was read, Marco Velez's composure finally broke. He slammed a fist on the table. A string of vicious curses hissed in Spanish. The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. Order. Order in the court. Through the chaos, Rex remained perfectly still, his body pressed against Alex's leg. He wasn't looking at the commotion. He was looking up at Alex, watching his partner's face. He saw the tension drain from it, replaced by a profound, weary peace. Rex's tail gave a single, slow, sweeping wag across the floor. He understood. The long hunt was over. The judge set a sentencing date, but the outcome was a foregone conclusion. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. As marshals led a seething Velez away, he shot one last, venomous glare at Alex. But this time, it had no power. The monster had been caged. Outside on the courthouse steps, surrounded by reporters and flashing cameras, Chief Harris made a brief statement. Alex stood beside him, Lisa on one side, Rex on the other. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The image of the officer, his family, and the dog who had saved him said everything about justice, resilience, and the cost of victory. That night, for the first time in over a year, the Carter house was completely, truly quiet. The security detail was officially stood down. The constant hum of the police radio was gone. The only sound was the wind in the trees and the contented sigh of a dog dreaming on the rug. A deep and lasting peace settled over the household. The shadow was gone. The fear had receded. They were free. In the days that followed, life began to normalize in a way it never had before. Alex's sleep was deep and untroubled by nightmares. Rex, no longer needing to be constantly on alert, seemed to relax into a new, softer version of himself. He played with hope not as a trainer, but as a friend, rolling in the autumn leaves with a joy that was pure and unburdened. This was the happy ending they had fought for. The future Rex had ensured with his loyalty and courage. It wasn't just a return to normal. It was the beginning of something new, something built on the foundation of all they had survived. The past was finally, definitively, behind them. And as Alex watched his family, Lisa laughing in the kitchen, Chloe and Leo playing in the living room, Rex and Hope snoozing together in a patch of sunlight, he knew that every scar, every moment of pain, had been worth it for this. They were whole. They were safe. They were home. With the trial's gavel strikes still echoing in their minds, a new, profound quiet settled over the Carter household. It was not the silence of anticipation or fear, but of peace, a deep, resonating calm that seeped into the very walls of their home. The frantic energy of the past year dissolved, replaced by the gentle, predictable rhythms of a life finally reclaimed. Alex's recovery entered its final phase. The physical therapy sessions in the backyard were no longer about regaining basic strength, but about refining it. He and Rex would run together again, not the frantic sprints of their patrol days, but easy, joyful jogs through the neighborhood, their breathing falling into a familiar, synchronized rhythm. Hope, now a sleek and powerful adolescent, would race ahead, then circle back, her joy infectious. The department officially honored Rex with a full medical retirement. At a small, private ceremony at the station, Chief Harris presented Alex with a shadow box containing Rex's badge, his worn leather leash, and a plaque that read, K9 Rex, partner, protector, hero. Rex, for his part, seemed to understand the significance. He sat proudly as officers, many with tears in their eyes, lined up to give him one last pat. "But this isn't an ending," Harris announced, turning to Hope, who sat alert at Alex's side. "It's a changing of the guard." He presented a new, gleaming badge. "K9 Hope, you are now officially partnered with Officer Alex Carter. Make your predecessor proud." The transition was seamless. Hope, having learned from the best, stepped into her role with a maturity that belied her age. Her training with Rex had been so thorough that she required little adjustment. She now rode shotgun in the K9 unit, her head out the window, taking in the world she was sworn to protect. Alex, back in his full-duty capacity, found a new kind of joy in the work, watching the legacy of his partnership with Rex live on in Hope's keen eyes and unwavering focus. At home, Rex embraced his retirement with the same dignity he had embodied his service. He was the patriarch of the backyard, the wise observer from his sunny spot on the porch. He no longer patrolled the perimeter with tense vigilance, but with a calm, proprietorial air. His most important job now was as the family's gentle guardian, always keeping a watchful eye on Chloe and Leo, his presence a constant, comforting reassurance. One Saturday, Alex and Lisa embarked on a project they had dreamed of during the darkest days, building a large, shaded patio where they could all gather. As Alex mixed concrete and laid pavers, Rex supervised, his tail wagging as he watched his family create something lasting and new. Hope, ever eager, helped by carrying small, lightweight tools to Alex, her tail a blur of pride. "He's not just watching," Lisa said, handing Alex a cold drink as they admired their work. "He's enjoying it. He's finally able to just be." Alex nodded, putting his arm around her. "He earned it. We all did." That evening, they had their first barbecue on the new patio. Walter Brennan was there, sharing more stories of Duke. Chief Harris and Detective Reyes came, their laughter easy and unburdened. The garden was filled with the sounds of sizzling food, cheerful conversation, and Chloe and Leo's delighted shrieks as they played with Hope. Rex moved through the gathering, accepting affection from everyone, before settling back at Alex's feet. He wasn't just a pet or a retired officer. He was the cornerstone of it all. The reason this scene of simple, profound happiness was possible. As the stars emerged over a peaceful home, one question remained. What new adventures awaited their expanded pack? The legacy was secure. The work would continue with hope. The love, tested in fire and tragedy, had proven unbreakable. They had not just survived, they had built a future together. 5 years later, the air in the newly renamed Rex Memorial Park was warm and sweet with the scent of blooming lilacs and freshly cut grass. But the atmosphere was far from somber. It was vibrant, filled with the laughter of children and the cheerful buzz of a community celebration. The garden, once a concept born from gratitude, was now a reality, a place of life, not loss. At the heart of the garden stood not a grim monument, but a beautiful bronze statue of a German shepherd, captured mid-stride, ears pricked with intelligent alertness, his expression noble and kind. It was Rex, forever in his prime, forever on watch. The plaque at its base read, "In honor of K9 Rex, a loyal partner, a guardian angel, a beloved friend. He knew I was alive." Alex Carter, his arm around Lisa, felt a profound peace as he looked at the statue. It wasn't a marker of an ending, but a celebration of a life that had irrevocably changed theirs for the better. Their son Leo, now a spirited 7-year-old, waved a small flag nearby, while Chloe, a confident teenager, chatted with friends, her arm slung casually over Hope's back. Hope, a picture of sleek, powerful maturity, sat calmly amidst the crowd, her official K9 badge gleaming on her harness. Her work with Alex was the stuff of local legend now, a successful partnership that stood firmly on the foundation Rex had built. But today she was off-duty, a beloved member of the family enjoying the festivities. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. The mayor spoke of community safety. Chief Harris, his hair now more silver than black, spoke of legacy and the unbreakable bond between officers and their K9 partners. But the most powerful moment came when Alex stepped to the podium, not in uniform, but in a simple button-down shirt. "They say some heroes wear capes," Alex began, his voice clear and warm. "But I've learned the best ones wear collars. Rex taught me more about courage, loyalty, and unconditional love than I could ever put into words. He didn't just save my life, he showed me how to live it." He looked directly at his family, then down at Hope, who thumped her tail. His legacy isn't just cast in bronze. It's in every life he touched, in the work his protege continues to do, and in the love that fills our home every single day. As he spoke, a familiar monarch butterfly, a splash of brilliant orange against the blue sky, fluttered down and landed gracefully on the bronze statue's head. It rested there, its wings opening and closing slowly, as if paying its own respects. Hope, seeing it, let out a soft, happy woof, and her tail wagged in that same contented, rhythmic thump that had always been Rex's signature. She wasn't agitated. She was acknowledging an old friend. Lisa squeezed Alex's hand, her eyes glistening. "He's here," she whispered. After the ceremony, as families picnicked on the grass and children played around the statue, the Carter family found a quiet bench. Rex, their living, breathing Rex, lay at their feet. At 14 years old, he was a senior gentleman, his muzzle frosted with gray, his movements slower and more deliberate. But his amber eyes were still bright, filled with a deep, abiding contentment. He was healthy. He was happy. The liver damage was a distant memory, managed with a special diet and the boundless love of his family. He spent his days napping in sunbeams, going for gentle walks, and supervising his backyard domain with a calm, paternal air. He and Hope had a quiet understanding. She was the active protector now, and he was the wise elder statesman. "He still tries to follow you to the car sometimes," Lisa said to Alex, watching as Rex lifted his head to track a passing squirrel with mild interest. "Old habits," Alex smiled, leaning down to scratch the special spot behind Rex's ear that still made his back leg thump happily. "You've done enough, partner. Your job is just to be loved." Later, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, they walked home together. The five of them, Alex, Lisa, Chloe, Leo, and their two dogs, one young and vibrant, the other old and revered. Their shadows stretched out before them, a single, intertwined shape moving toward the warm light of their home. That evening, as Alex turned out the lights, the only sounds were the wind in the trees and the synchronized, steady breathing of his two sleeping dogs. Hope was already curled up on her bed in the hallway. Rex was on his plush orthopedic bed by the fireplace, sighing deeply in his sleep. Leo was tucked in, dreaming of his superhero dog. Chloe was reading in her room. Lisa was waiting for him upstairs. This was the peace they had fought for. This was the future Rex had given them. The story that had begun with a desperate howl in a cemetery had found its perfect, happy ending in the quiet, loving rhythm of an ordinary night. A little slower, a little older, but filled with more love than ever before. The dawn they had fought so hard for had finally arrived, and it was more beautiful than any of them had ever imagined.
That celebrate the bond between humans and animals. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that reminds us what true loyalty feels like.